Hello and welcome to True Crime Diary, in which we look at the annals of true crime to find events that happened on this week in history. I'm your host, Mark DeCano, and with me are my friends, Jed Lester.
All right.
And Rue Turner.
Hello.
The date we're looking at this week is August 21st, 1911, when the Deputy Director of Museums at the Louvre discovered that the Mona Lisa was no longer hanging on the wall. In fact, it had been gone for over 24 hours, and the theft of the century had taken place.
Interesting. What was he the deputy director of again?
The Louvre.
And one more time?
The Louvre.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know too much about this crime. Have you got any more info?
No, nothing.
Okay. Thanks. See you next week.
They thought that the painting had been taken to be photographed, but as I say, it was 24 hours before anyone realised that it was gone. When someone actually went and checked the photography lab, and it wasn't there, and they realised that actually, no, it had been stolen.
When was the Mona Lisa painted?
You're talking about 1503 to 1506 kind of time.
Wow.
Where do you start looking for it? I mean, something that's valuable will be surely spirited away fairly quickly.
Well, for starters, was it classed... today, it's classed as priceless. Was it this, iconic portrait or not, really? I'm assuming it was, but because it was still hundreds of years old.
Yeah, well, that's important because obviously, as a Leonardo da Vinci, it was still valuable. But at the time, it wasn't considered to be, absolutely the most famous painting in the world as we would know it today. It was a painting, a valuable painting, but it was just hung up along with everything else. They didn't really...
There was no order.
No, they didn't curate a collection like we would know it. It wasn't like whole group by artist or time period or anything. It's like, there's a space, whack it up there.
So it didn't have wasn't as famous as it is today, so therefore would this theft have heightened its fame?
I would say the argument could probably be that it would not be famous at all if not for this event.
That's quite interesting, that, isn't it? Because you could... people, perhaps they don't criticise it, but they kind of analyse it quite heavily, and yes, the oxygen of publicity gave it its famousness-ment. Because that's a word.
Yeah.
The greatest publicity campaign any painting has ever had, really.
Let's face it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, originally it was hanging on the wall with some religious paintings, I think.
I think there was a Titian one side of it.
Bless you.
Yeah. I can't remember what was the other side. Probably another group, sort of religious scene, I think.
Yeah. So it was hanging on the wall between two religious group paintings.
So everything was just lumped in.
Everything was lumped in together, yeah. And also...
So then curating is a new thing, newish thing.
Yeah. If you remember, if you ever visited a stately home or a royal palace, so bear in mind that the people who go to the museums and galleries would be quite well to do. If you go to the palaces and the big open houses, the paintings are basically frame to frame abutted around the room in a lot unless it's a grand portrait of the owner of the house. They'll be all abutted literally frame to frame. They were basically painted almost to measure. So when you're looking at an art exhibition where they're just literally putting anything on the wall,
so it's like
it would reflect.
It's like
the time.
A pre World War Tetris.
well,
kind of.
Arguably, yeah.
Is it what? So they just make it fit.
I don't think anyone's shuffling them around at the bottom to make them fit.
Yeah.
Turning them around.
Also, who's painting L-shaped paintings?
I think the point is that they were put together because of the size of the painting rather than the content of the painting.
Which I can tell you because I've seen the painting that we're talking about, and it's quite small. I'm going to suggest that it could be about A3, but I don't know. It's small though. It's smaller than you think.
Yeah, it's about A3, I suppose. It's 30.5 inches tall and 21 inches wide.
What's that in real money?
A3.
What?
A3.
It's about A3.
Anyway, so
fairly underwhelming size for a painting.
yes, and also I would say it's. Is this controversial? I'd say it's quite underwhelming visually.
Yeah.
But he chose that painting, so why did the perpetrator choose this seemingly not very well known or thought about portrait?
So we're talking now about Vincenzo Peruggia.
Buongiorno.
Oh yeah.
Now, given that
I
he...
wonder where he was from.
Well, I wonder indeed. That's a very Italian-sounding name.
Grazie.
And, of course, Da Vinci was Italian. They were both...
Yes.
They didn't know each
Interesting.
other.
No.
But they were both from the same region of Italy. And he was quite a passionately patriotic man, well, he claimed. And he sees this painting, this great painting by this great artist.
In a different country.
In a different country, in Paris, France. And he says to himself something along the lines of, what's this great work of art doing in France? It should be in Mother Italy at home. I'm going to take this painting and I'm going to liberate it. And Napoleon stole this along with so many other great works
Was he
of
saying
Italian
this
art.
out loud? 'Cause
Yeah, I
that's
assume
pretty
so.
much a not the greatest alibi.
Oh, well, it would have been a giveaway, yeah. I assume he said it at home. And he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to take this thing, get it back to Italy, bang it on the wall up there and be treated as a hero. Or words to that effect, I imagine.
Right.
I Madonna still is a great painting.
So it's an act of artistic repatriation.
Yes, yeah. Or so it would seem.
Yes. So hang on, he worked at the gallery.
He worked at the gallery. He was like an odd job man. He did like a bit of painting and that sort of...
A painter and decorator rather than
Yeah.
artistic painter.
Yeah, painting. Yeah, I don't mean he painted copies of the Mona Lisa.
So if you worked at a museum or just a shop or something, and you were seen picking up an item for sale or an item on show, I think people would think you were moving it or taking it off, or I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's different in a gallery, but he wouldn't have been under suspicion at all, basically, would he?
Well, no, probably not. I mean, as I said at the beginning, even though there was a space on the wall, the assumption at the time was that it would have probably been taken to be photographed.
Yeah.
Is
that true? Would that have been a thing?
Yes, they would make.
That's a fact.
Yeah,
all right.
they would
I
make
thought it was
postcards and things.
Right. Oh, okay.
First of all, it would have been completely normal for him to be carrying around a picture. In fact, when he stole the picture, someone held the door open for him, so
Yeah.
he was walking out with this painting.
My neighbour did that to a
Held the door open for someone stealing the Mona Lisa?
I know. My neighbour had a bike stolen from her shed, and she didn't recognise the bike. And this bloke was wheeling a bike out down an alleyway next to her house, and she held the back gate open for him, and went, "There's bye." And anyway, and then later found out that it was her own. It was like her daughter's bike or something like that.
Oh,
anyway, I suppose that's not the same as the Mona Lisa.
Well, is it a particularly famous bike?
No, and it was.
It wasn't back then.
It was. Yeah, now it's. now it's in the design
bummer.
museum.
Well, there you go.
So he worked there, and understandably, I'd say someone held the door open for him. That's what I'd do, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he.
What was he called? All right, Vince.
All right, Vinny.
Let me get that for you.
It would be quite normal for someone to be walking around holding a painting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Him.
Because people used to go into the galleries quite a lot and paint. They'd take easels in and they would make
That's right.
copies in front of the originals.
Really?
Yeah, it was quite normal back then.
Yeah.
I mean, people are allowed to do it
You'd
now,
literally-
but only by
Oh, are they?
special request.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
say you got tasered for that now, but
So first of all, he took the painting from the wall. He took it to the stairwell. He removed it from the frame. He wrapped his decorator's smock around it. He went down the stairwell. Someone opened the door, let him out, and then he took the doorknob off the second exit, the exit to the courtyard, so that he could just swing the door open. He later threw the doorknob in the river, I think, or on the embankment. And then as he left the courtyard out through the gates weren't guarded. So he just strolled off down the street
that's
with
the
his...
end of that. Yeah.
There it was, gone.
So did they have? They had no clue, basically, did they? Because there was no. Well, presumably there was security guards. Were there? Was there? Perhaps I'm thinking of their late invention.
Well, the security was very lax, put it that way. In fact, it was so lax that the Paris Journal, a publication at the time, put in an advert that suggested that in the interests of art and for the safeguarding of the precious objects, the public is requested to be good enough to wake their guards if they're found to be asleep.
Blimey. So nearly the perfect crime because he worked there and everyone knew him. So when you worked at...
Shut up!
Yeah.
You could have, I'm just taking... Couldn't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely anything.
Well, in fairness, anyone who's ever worked anywhere could probably...
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, statistically speaking, you're more likely to lose stock to internal theft than external theft.
Right.
Yeah. Probably about 60% is internal.
Oh, is it?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. So he off into the night or whatever it was.
Away he went, back to his lodgings.
Yeah. Well, how far away was that? His lodgings?
No.
I know. I mean, the sense of
Still
walking across Paris.
He was.
It still wasn't it. No one would have, even if he just held it, open to the elements. I don't think anyone would have gone, "Oh my God."
He was observed walking along the banks of the Seine because that's when someone saw him throw the doorknob away.
Right.
So he was wandering down the riverside, doorknob in one hand and painting under the other arm.
But
Excuse me, have you seen anyone stealing a painting? No, but I saw a bloke chucking a doorknob in the Seine.
Of all the things to remember, the doorknob bit.
Yeah.
Mind you, I suppose it connected him to it. But if he'd walked along with no coverage of, wasn't covered up, I still don't think people would have gone, stop there. Thief.
Well, again, it's not like he was walking down the street with the most famous painting in the world. He was walking down the street with the painting.
Yeah.
Da Vinci was famous. The painting specifically wasn't famous. But it was still a Da Vinci. People would have seen someone walking. The point is, it was covered up, and the only reason he garnered attention was because he was lobbing something in the river. As someone who was employed, he would have been the first to be interviewed by the police.
Yes.
And bear in mind that it wasn't revealed where the painting was for 3 more years.
Was he still in possession of it for the whole of those 3 years, or had he
Yes. It was in his room.
Wow.
sat in his room for 3 years?
Sat-
The police.
Sat in his room for 3 years, and in fact, when the police went round to say, "Oh, we're going down the list of all the people who," they didn't say
They
this,
work here.
yeah, all the workers from the Louvre who've all done, whatever, the odd job men. They went round to his rooms, to his apartment, and they investigated and they interviewed him, and then they left. And the whole time, it was in a suitcase under his bed.
And he was profusely sweating at the time.
One presumed.
Yeah, that's bizarre, isn't it?
Well, let's consider this. So first of all, the painting actually spent most of its time propped up on his kitchen table.
Really? Wow.
So that he could have breakfast with it. He said that he...
So no one came round his flat then, presumably, because that would
no
have
visitors other than the
slightly-
police, who presumably knocking on the door and him say, "Hang on a minute, I've just got to
muffling.
hide this painting under my
Yeah.
bed, and then you can come in."
You haven't given us time to hide.
Yeah, he basically just spent all day gazing at it, or all day, or every opportunity he could.
Is that bad police work, or is that just of the time?
I think it's bad for any time, to be honest.
You
But let's look at what they did. So first of all, they questioned him, and then they went away. They didn't search his apartment, which is interesting because they would have found it. It would have been a short investigation. However,
They just questioned him.
they just
Yeah,
questioned
right.
him. But
Did you
subsequent
do
to
it?
that,
No. Okay, thanks very much.
thanks for your time. But subsequent to that, people who worked at the Louvre were then followed home
Oh,
and searched and had their rooms searched.
interesting.
So they
But
were
not him.
searched, but not him.
Wow.
Also, on the point of taking the painting from the Louvre, taking the painting from the frame, saying out, I don't know how to do that. I imagine it would take me a while. But it turns out that Peruggia was the man who put the painting in the frame in the first place.
Yeah.
As one of his odd jobs, he was a hanger
I
of
wonder if you
frames.
put it in knowing that you're going to take it out. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
And it's interesting because if you remember, not only, I would find it quite difficult to take a painting out. He's done it. He put it in so he can take it out. That's fine. But also, when they discovered it, they found a thumbprint on the glass of the frame, which you'd think, well, it's his thumbprint. It would be there.
Yes, that could be easily.
Yeah. However, bearing in mind that it would be there if he'd just hung it, but it would have been cleaned, and all the paintings would have been cleaned regularly. So it shouldn't have really have been on there unless he'd been otherwise handling it. Which again, you say, well, he might have been handling it for another reason. But the point of fact is that the police had his right thumbprint on file because he'd been picked up for sort of minor infractions earlier on. So he would already have had the cloud of suspicion over him, but they never checked. And the other thing is that they took a print of him when they questioned him. So there's a thumbprint on the glass, there's a thumbprint on file, and there's a thumbprint that they take from him. Now, they only took the right thumbprint, because that was custom at the time. They didn't take a full set like we do now. They only took the right thumbprint, and they only had the right thumbprint on file, and the thumbprint on the glass was the left thumbprint. However, none of the three ever met. At no point did the police go, let's check this thumbprint against the one we have. Even to point them in the right direction. Even to raise the questions about, hang on a minute, where were you with this painting?
Or even search his apartment.
They
did everybody else's.
And I think he said he was working somewhere else that day.
Right.
Which they could have just gone and asked them.
They could have gone and asked the person. They could have asked the person who opened the door.
Yeah. So it was a litany of errors, basically. The police investigation was shambolic from the outset. And then the investigation broadened further and further, so much so that there was a case of an American artist on a ship landed at New York, and he was stopped by the police there. I'm walking here! And because he was carrying a square package under his arm.
That looked like a painting?
Looked like it could be a painting. Turned out it was a painting. Turned out it was his painting that he'd painted. But because he was carrying a painting on a boat that had come from France, he was stopped and searched. That's how wide the search got.
Wow.
And how crazy.
And how desperate. Yeah.
Bearing in mind that in the first few days, they had been in the room with it.
Yeah.
So, also, during the course of the police investigation, they arrested a poet named Guillaume Apollinaire, and a friend of his you might have heard of as an artist named Pablo Picasso.
He would have been, in his early 30s in 1911?
I've heard of his work.
Known as an artist, but a younger man. Yeah.
And he's a fairly mouthy, opinionated, strong fella. I can't imagine...
At the time?
Yeah. In the early 30s, he'd have been at his peak.
Okay.
I mean, they
physically, anyway.
Hang on, what's his connection? Why is he...
He was questioned because there was reports that they'd been receiving stolen goods from the Louvre, basically, that they'd been handling like figurines and busts and sculptures. And or they might have been buying statuettes that had, they'd either stolen or bought things that had been stolen. So either stealing or handling stolen goods.
Is that just allegation?
That was allegation. It was suspicion. Although it's possible that, on an unrelated note, they might have done anyway, but just not what they were being suspected of.
Yes.
There was no collection, and they released them obviously after a bit, and there was howls in the street from art students about celebrating their release.
Mm-hmm. Citroen Picasso. That was his sister.
So then all the theories come out. There's the suggestion that the painting has been sold to a crazy Chicago millionaire for $5,000.
Of course.
A crazy Chicago millionaire.
Yeah. There's the suggestion that...
$5,000. Is that much? Is that a lot?
Well, in 1911 it was...
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a Mona Lisa, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I wasn't there, so I don't know. I
wonder when that speculation... Was it like soon after, or was it years after?
It was a stolen painting, so you're only going to get 10 cents on the dollar. Or whatever.
If it was years after, it'd be more... Price would have gone up, is my point.
Yeah, especially when it got famous.
Exactly, yeah.
There was the suggestion that a young boy had taken it because he'd fallen in love with it.
As you do.
Really?
Yeah. And what else? Right. There was. It was suggested that there was a woman hater who destroyed the painting with acid.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. Just nicked it and destroyed it.
Yep. There was the idea was put forward that maybe the government had arranged for it to be removed to create sensation as a way of distracting the public from flare-ups in French Morocco that were going on around that time.
I mean, that'd work, wouldn't it?
Or the classic, the mob done it. If the
I don't really,
mafia got involved, they stole it.
It's easy to blame the mob again, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean,
For something that most people wouldn't have known it was there.
But if the mob had taken it, would they have let him sit on it for 3 years?
No.
Where the fuck you get off talking to people about me behind my back, going over my head?
And of course, once you mention the mob,
The mob.
and then there's a possibility the government and the mob were working in cahoots.
The mobbament.
Yeah.
Oh right, okay. Is that a thing?
Well, that's what they said about
I mean,
JFK, wasn't it?
Mob and lining pockets and stuff.
You nick
Again,
the
it seems a
painting,
bit kind of like, why would they care about that? The painting I'm talking about. But
well, quite,
anyway.
Conspiracy theories, I suppose, aren't really a new thing, are they?
yeah.
Anyway,
They're
let's
not made to make sense.
No, let's face it, all of that was rubbish, wasn't it?
Turns out, yes, it was.
Turns out, yeah. Just shows that any conspiracy theory
It's
is
bollocks.
proved to be rubbish.
Yeah, except the moon landings. Paintings in his breakfast nook. He's admiring the painting every opportunity he can. And I'm going to tell you, it's something he said when he was at court. He said, I shall never forget it. I locked the door and stood bewitched before La Gioconda. I fell victim to her smile and feasted my eyes on my treasure every evening, discovering each time new beauty and perversity in her. I fell in love with her.
Wow.
So, like that.
It's all right.
It's all right.
She's all right. I'm not, mind you, I suppose he probably wasn't in a relationship, and
to
he
say.
probably lived a solitary existence. And I suppose if you're in a solitary environment and you've only got one visual reference, then I suppose
Where are
you
you
can
going with
find
this?
beauty in something. But I think he was grasping at straws a bit.
I should explain why he referred to the painting as La Gioconda and not the Mona Lisa, as we would say, because the painting is of Mona Lisa del Giocondo, who was the young wife of one, get ready for this, Francesco di Bartolomeo di Zanobi del Giocondo.
Bravissimo.
Young wife of.
Yes, so he was a Florentine nobleman, and she was his young wife.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone in Italy and beyond referred to the painting as La Gioconda.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, yes. So it was a bloke who took it upon himself to say, this is Italian, I'm nicking it for Italy, basically.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that was the argument. Although it was always speculated that probably did it for money. But his argument was, no, I've taken it for Italy because it was stolen. Now, I should probably point out that it wasn't stolen from Italy in the first place. That didn't happen. It was sold to France. He said it was stolen by Napoleon, but actually France had it long before Napoleon came to power, or probably was even born. So it was sold to King Francis I, King of France, for the sum of 4,000 florins.
Oh, yeah.
And it was hung in the palace, and then subsequently Louis XIV had it transferred to Palace of Versailles. Mm-hmm. And then after the Revolution, Versailles as a palace became a museum, and it was after the Revolution that Napoleon became emperor. So a lot of time passed before Napoleon would have even got close to it, other than just going and having a look.
So it's not in any way an Elgin Marbles style pilfering.
No. So it wasn't stolen, that was nonsense. So the argument is either he was incompetent enough to believe the story he'd made up,
or just very passionate for his homeland art.
Yeah, or he wanted the money. And after the 3 years of it being on his breakfast nook, he suddenly tried to sell the painting.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I agree with the money's not an issue thing, because if money was an issue, he would have sold it within, I don't know, probably hours, but weeks, as opposed to it sitting there for ages. But ultimately, he, I don't know, changed his mind and tried to sell it.
The story doesn't really hold up, does it? So if you steal
a bit
something
weird.
for money, then you sell it. If you sell it for repatriation, you repatriate it.
Exactly.
And he did neither of those things.
Mm.
He
I mean,
neither sold it nor sent it back to Italy.
I mean, I suppose both of those actions would have revealed who nicked it, I suppose, but presumably that's why he sat on it for ages.
Well, his first attempts to sell the painting were to a dealer in London, which would imply that it wasn't going back to Italy at all.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Further away.
It was, if anything, getting further away, yes. But the idea was that it would ultimately go back to
Florence.
Florence, whence it came.
Mm.
So,
Maybe he tried to sell it to London, because they already had one. I just thought they got to collect all the Mona Lisas.
what?
Well, there's a Mona Lisa in Isleworth. Well, there was a Mona Lisa in Isleworth.
What?
So, hang on. What
There's several.
what came first? Not
I
that it
don't know.
matters.
I don't know
This
whether it's before.
Isleworth Mona Lisa,
I
is it?
think it was before, because she's meant to be younger in the Isleworth Mona Lisa. It's only called
The
the Isleworth
Isleworth
Mona
Mona-
Lisa because it was kept in a collection in Isleworth from memory. I don't know where it is now. It's probably somewhere else.
Hang on. Why? So hang on. When was the Isleworth Mona Lisa in Isleworth? And please say about 1983, because I would have walked near it every day on the way to school.
I think it came to light not long after that. It was at
okay.
Yeah,
So it was
1913. I think
it's
was when
annoying.
it was first seen.
The Isleworth Mona Lisa.
The Isleworth Mona Lisa was
In
first
public.
seen in 1913.
Yeah, when it was first seen in public.
Jesus.
So was it a first go at the
But there's a
portrait,
few. There's one
or
which
it
I
was a
think
copy? Yeah.
is now attributed to someone in his studio, so an assistant.
Da Vinci Studio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because he would have quite a team of people.
Mhm.
But the Mona Lisa quite possibly isn't entirely painted by him anyway. A lot of work. was
Hang
done.
on.
A lot of the masters would do
That's a
the
crime.
drawings and do all the.
It's another
the
podcast.
direction, and then bods in the studio would fill them out. Like Warhol. Warhol practically produced no artwork at all.
Quite right.
That's what the factory was.
Objectively. So, like, whatever. Fernando did blues. Vincenzo did greens. That kind of
like painted by numbers.
the kind of delegation
Yeah.
of. Right, oh, okay. Finally, after a few years, he attempted to sell. Did he? I
Yes.
wonder if he just got his nerves were shot.
Yeah.
He got sick of it.
Well, this is interesting.
It
So
wasn't working out.
this is what happened. He took he got the painting to Italy near the end of 1913. Now, so we're talking about like late November.
They still haven't found it.
Still haven't found it. There's an art dealer in Florence named Jerry.
Jerry.
That's his surname,
Oh right. Okay.
Mr. Jerry.
Oh okay.
He gets a letter,
Oh yeah.
and the letter says,
Ciao Jerry.
"I have stolen the Mona Lisa."
Well, it doesn't, does it?
Yeah.
Really?
Basically saying, I've
Are you
got-
interested?
Basically, effectively, yes. Which is fantastic. So, obviously, Jerry the art dealer, first of all, this is rubbish. Second of all, can't believe his luck.
It's bound to be complete rubbish from a loony. But
Yeah.
It's too irresistible not to follow
Or-
up.
To
Yeah,
go
or not,
yeah,
so,
put
yeah.
it in your spam folder.
It's either complete madness or it isn't. Well, that's one of the things, because when it finally got to court, Peruggia insisted that he didn't bring up the subject of money. Although why he would take it to an art dealer and not to a gallery director or a government
Another
representative or
museum,
something,
Yeah.
would say, well, you probably wanted money. He did say that he assumed there would be a reward, but he was returning it for the glory of Da Vinci.
For Italia.
And also, no one asked him to return it. It was all his.
It was all on his
Idea.
own pack. So he said that the art dealer brought up the subject of money. 500,000 lira was the sum that was mooted about. Jerry, of course, in court was outraged by that suggestion, and he said that Peruggia brought up the amount of money and named
okay.
how much it was. So there was a back and forth about that. As much as Peruggia might have insisted it wasn't about the money, he does seem to have taken an awkward backward route of getting the painting to Florence,
Yes.
i.e. via an art dealer in London and then an art dealer in Florence. So getting closer to Florence, but still going through dealerships and not through
Governing
channels.
Yeah.
So Jerry, the art dealer, contacts the director of the Uffizi Gallery, Giovanni Poggi, and the two of them arrange to meet this man who identifies himself as Leonardo. Very imaginative.
Oh right, yes.
At the Hotel Tripoli Italia, where Leonardo is staying.
So he's travelled to Florence with.
He's made it to Florence
said
with the painting
Yep.
under his arm.
Yep.
And they go, okay, so now we need to verify this
Of course.
painting is genuine. And
it's not the Isleworth Mona Lisa.
It's not the Isleworth Mona Lisa. They're
Can
very
I just
clear.
check? Is this the Isleworth Mona Lisa?
So in order to authenticate it, they compare it to a postcard.
Oh yeah.
That
Right.
They would have
yeah.
bought from the street outside the Louvre in Paris.
It's the best way to do it.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, that's the one. So when Poggi and Jerry and inverted commas Leonardo, also known as Peruggia, left the hotel, it was the concierge of the hotel that thought they were stealing from the hotel. And he says, "Oh, what's that painting?" And they tried to explain that they were taking it to the Uffizi Gallery, but he was having none of it, called the police.
Wow.
Next thing you know, he's up in court.
So he was finally banged to rights, effectively. Had he taken a holiday, annual leave from the Louvre? Leave from the Louvre?
Louvre leave.
Louvre leave, or had he left the Louvre? Was it Louvre leave or had he left the Louvre? Is my question.
Yeah, it's easy for you to say.
It's easy for you to say. Oh yeah, I don't.
Was
I don't have the answer to
was
that.
it time in Louvre from the Louvre, or had he left the Louvre, or was it Louvre leave? I'm aware he didn't go back to his job because he got arrested, and what I'm saying is HR needs to be notified.
I think it was very much like piecemeal in those days. He would come and go. Come in and paint this wall. Here's
right. Okay.
£1 franc.
So in court,
he
probably said, "I was, doing it for Mother Italy."
Very much so.
Presumably, I don't know.
I mean, he was not an imposing figure. He was a little man. He had a huge comedy mustache.
Oh yeah, good.
But he spoke with huge passion, and he had the courtroom and the wider world outside, sighing and oohing and ahhing and
Passion about why he did it.
yeah.
Right. Italy probably loved him, didn't they? If a new hero, created because he decided that, even though it was all rubbish, he brought home the artwork that deserved to be at home. But
this was an Italian court.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Why was he being tried in Italy?
That's a
He's
point.
committed no crime.
Say, how did you get to be an Italian?
Never mind, whose confession is this?
Yeah, that's. Hang on. Hadn't he inverted commas stolen some art from a Florence hotel? Meaning that's the reason why.
I think that would have been quickly
That's
made
ridiculous.
clear
Why
just
was
by
it
looking.
Why was it in Italy?
Well, there was a lot of argument about the whole trial being illegal, and it should have been held in Paris.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have to assume there's a slight amount of bias on behalf of the legal establishment.
Perhaps the Italians were frightened, and even though they didn't necessarily want this painting, they were frightened that Exhibit A might not come home to Italy after the trial if it went to France.
Yeah, well, it was French. It had to be returned sooner or later to France. But I think the fact is that obviously in France they were outraged at the theft, and in Italy he was suddenly became a national hero overnight because of his impassioned speeches in court about his motivation for bringing it home to Florence.
Hated in France, loved in Italy.
So it's fair to assume there may have been some framing of if we hold it in Italy, we won't attribute the same bias to the proceedings that he would get. He would be vilified in Paris, whereas he is an Italian citizen. Sure. So one way or another, they're going to argue the point. It was maintained by some that it was an illegal trial, but nonetheless, it was held.
So what did they? What did he get?
So he was found guilty of the theft ultimately, and he was sentenced to 1 year and 15 days. And he responded to the sentence by saying, "Well, could have been worse."
Could have been.
Quite philosophical. Could have been a lot worse. And in fact, it turned out it was a lot better because he appealed and ultimately he got reduced to 7 months. And since by that time he'd been in prison already for 7 months for the course of the trial, they let him out.
Wow. Blimey. That's incredible, isn't it?
He went back to the hotel to where his rooms were before.
The Tripoli
Italia.
Tripoli Hotel, yep.
Only now it was called something else. Can you guess what it might be called?
Well, hang on. So it only took 7... It had renamed 7 months after.
Yes.
I thought that was a modern day thing.
No.
They literally instantly...
There and then the hotel went, "We've got
Ka-ching.
something here." Ka-ching.
Are we talking La Gioconda?
We're talking La
We are,
Gioconda.
right.
Yeah.
No, I mean that as opposed to the Mona Lisa Hotel.
They don't call it the Mona Lisa in Italy. We're now in Italy, Florence.
What do France call it?
Ours.
Quite right. The
Our painting, Notre Dame. So it gets back to the hotel and it's renamed itself La Gioconda.
I mean,
in
to
that
be fair,
time.
I've got quite right. I mean,
Why not? Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Jump on that.
Patriotism is patriotism, but
Yeah,
commerce
sure,
is commerce.
Hang on, it's not. It wasn't called. This is where the La Gioconda was found. Hotel.
It wasn't,
'Cause
but
it should have been.
I can tell you that if you went into the foyer, there was a notice with a reproduction of the Mona Lisa hanging in the foyer wall. And the notice underneath says, "Here, La Gioconda was recovered.
Excellent.
From now on, the hotel will be known as the Gioconda Hotel. One willingly lodges here at the sign of a masterpiece and under the auspices of immortal beauty."
I bet they did all right out of that.
Well, I imagine so.
Presumably, the Mona Lisa, because it was technically French property, was after the trial was returned. I'd imagine.
Oh yeah. It went back to France,
It's in there now.
but not straight away.
Oh right. Oh, okay. Well, it went on a little.
It went on a tour.
Oh, good.
So the Italian authorities kept it. It went to Rome.
A
it
tour
went to Milan.
not for everyone to have a look at it. Surely, I thought I kind of. As soon as you say that, obviously I know what a tour is, but I kind of thought, so that I don't know, noblemen can privately look at it or something.
No, it went on public display.
Good.
It spent 5 days going. It started in Florence, and then it went to Rome and Milan as well. So they kept it for 5 days before they returned it to
Oh,
Paris.
it was only 5 days, right? Okay.
Yes, but on the first day at the gallery, at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence,
Yes.
there were 23,000 people showed up to see it
Wow.
in 1 day.
That's huge.
Yes.
That's really huge. That is more visitors than the National Portrait Gallery get in a day.
So how many?
Even
Which is
now.
how many?
I can't remember the numbers now, but I know it's a lot less than
Last time I
20,000.
counted.
I mean, it's a couple of thousand, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's a couple.
But
Last
I mean,
time I counted, I reckon
Yeah.
it was the
You're in single-digit thousands.
so National Gallery, City of London, National Gallery, 2,000 people a day on average. That's with a city of a population of 8 million, broadly speaking. Okay, so 100 years ago, Florence, 23,000 people in a day. That's about 10% of the population.
yeah.
Yeah, without social media publicity.
Without publicity, yeah. So anyone traveling,
Or frankly, hardly any publicity apart from I don't know a local newspaper or something. Perhaps
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, word would have spread like wildfire. Especially, I mean, the trial and everything would have added. That would have been in the papers.
I was going to say let's face it, the publicity is the reason why everyone piled
Yeah.
in, isn't it?
And that's even more people than came to see the empty wall.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest surprises that people turned up to the Louvre to see not the Mona Lisa. They turned up
You
to
mean the day after it got nicked, or
after the
for
theft.
years
People
and
would
years
go.
and years?
No, after the theft. Well, possibly for the 3 years, but
Yeah, right,
certainly
right.
for a significant period,
excellent.
people would turn up to see the hole on the wall where
and
there
they
was
kept
no
the whole. Oh,
no
that's
painting.
great. That's quite good. That I didn't know that.
It got more visitors for not being there than it did for when it
God,
was there.
Really? May as well have left.
They should have taken all the other paintings down as well. It would have been hugely.
3 iron papers it was hanging on.
Yeah. Just bang up for some
quite
picture
good,
hooks, and call yourself an art gallery.
Yeah.
Where's all the art? Oh, it's all been
nicked.
stolen. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll stay here anyway. How much is it to come in?
Interestingly enough, this great patriot of Italy ended his days in France, despite being the man who made the Mona Lisa the world's most famous painting. He himself died pretty much in obscurity at the age of 44. He was unknown and forgotten even at the time of his death.
That's not that long after, is it really? That's what, 10, 11-ish years
about
since
10
the
years,
theft.
yeah. Exactly right, yes. So it would still be, presumably, in recent memory, especially considering the breadth of the search, which went global.
You could argue that the world had better things to think about in the years, or frankly months after his the court case and release, and ultimately that's why the world forgot about him, because they then had 4 years, or Europe, 4 years of war. But
true, but when you consider that the Mona Lisa is still remembered,
and he isn't,
and he is not. So he died in 1925, and his obituary was even confused with that of another man by the name of Peruggia. So he became so not
obscure.
Famous and obscure that actually they didn't even remember.
So no one even noticed that he died until 3 years afterwards.
Exactly. Yes, very much so.
And it wasn't even him.
So yes, a sad tale to the most famous man in Italy who made the Mona Lisa, the most famous painting in the world. That's all for this time. If you want to know more about what we've discussed over the course of the episode, just Google it or something. You can see daily true crime updates on our Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or you can support the show with a PayPal donation. And links to all of those are on our website, truecrimediary.co.uk. Join us next time when we will be similarly discussing and digressing on another event in true crime history. Until then, my thanks to Jed and Rue. My name's Mark, and we'll see you on the next date in our True Crime Diary.